So in this video, let's take a look at the Photoshop process. So I'll just be narrating over the time lapse. What I'm doing here is I'm just taking some photo reference and I'm just downsampling using nearest neighbor, and I'm coming up with a palette to pick from. And you'll see now I'm cycling through my different layers from ZBrush here, and now I'm running an action that's going to composite all my lighting for me. And I'm just going to start adjusting the lighting a little bit to make it a little bit more realistic. And actions are great just to automate any steps of your workflow. So anything you can do that's consistent and reproducible, go ahead and make an action. That's the poly painting, but I'm going to go ahead and hide that. And now I'm just using the height map and a gradient map to quickly block in some base colors. So I'll start with some bolder color choices and just get this real sort of gestural color base going. And you'll see what I can also do then is blend in a little bit of the ambient occlusion map above the height map, and the gradient map will update. Now I can also blend in the gradient map mask from ZBrush. I can add it or just alpha blend it and it'll update and give me different color depth layers. Here I'm just multiplying or adding or subtracting a little bit of that color gradient map from ZBrush just to get a little bit of hue variation. Now you can soft light another one of those masks. And then I'll start using some of these masks as masks on those gradient maps and just experimenting with different blending. So really just trying to quickly get as much variation as I can through that gradient map, and then just by blending on top of it. So continuing to refine. And now I'll go back, and after I've set up more of those sort of variation depth layers, I'll go in and refine my gradient map in Photoshop here again, and I'll start seeing what colors I can start pulling out through this sort of modified depth or modified height map. And I'll keep inverting or hiding masks and trying different masks. So I'm just constantly experimenting and seeing what different blend modes and what different opacities and different masks will give me in addition to this gradient map. Now I'm creating just this localized color adjustment, just a little bit of a color curve here, and then per channel color adjustments for some basic color correction. And I'm just going ahead and I'm just locally painting in a few of these bricks at different opacities just to get slight value and hue shifts sort of at a local level. You could go ahead and have a couple of these curves adjustment layers and get more variation throughout, but just one simple one for the demo was fine. And so now I'm creating just a wash over everything, just to kind of unify it. So the bolder color choices are subdued a little bit with a bit of a wash. And now I'm creating a second wash layer that's a really dark color, and I'm doing a little bit of a levels adjustment on my height map. And that's just to sort of get some of these darker peaks here. And then what I do here is I've combined my AO map with it a little bit. And then I'll duplicate that layer and I'll give it a slightly different levels adjustment, but I'll give it a dark or a lighter color. And you'll see here I'm experimenting, trying to blend a little bit of the ambient occlusion map over the height map, and I'm testing what that result would be with a temporary threshold adjustment layer. And then once I like that blend, then I'll copy it and paste it into the layer mask. And here I'm using just a green color to sort of test what that levels adjustment should be. The green is just to help me visualize. And then I'll go ahead and I'll update my dark and light washes with that new layer mask. And I'm always turning off lighting and just evaluating color and looking at it with lighting. I'm always going back and forth. So now I'm bringing in just a couple of textures underneath the wash layer. And these are tiling textures that I've already got pre-made from photo sources. And I'm just setting them to different opacities and blend modes. And one thing you'll see me do though is, it happened really quick, but I'll use unsharp mask a lot. Usually with a higher radius. It's a way for me to quickly get some localized contrast. So as I start dropping these texture layers in, you saw it right there where it just got a little bit more contrasty. So I'll quickly hit that filter unsharp mask, and I'll just keep doing that to get more contrast out of it while I work. That also works on some of the masks as well. So now I'm going back to the grout mask that came out of ZBrush, and I'll start doing just a height map and gradient map pass on it as well, just to block in some colors. But one thing I'm doing is I'm doing this curves adjustment layer over the height map with just this really bright, blue and yellow gradient map, just so I can see where the initial colors would be placed. And now I'm going ahead, after setting that placement, I'm going ahead and picking my final colors. And then grabbing another texture and just overlaying that, or soft lighting it, or just alpha blending it into the grout just to give it some more textural variation. And then maybe trying out a mask, maybe an ambient occlusion or the gummy or something, just to weight it a little bit. And now I'll go back, and after I get all those layers kind of set up, I'll go back through and I'll keep experimenting with all the layers that I've already got set up. So I can keep experimenting and pushing and trying to see if there's a better setting somewhere to keep pushing the look. And here, of course, you'll see me start doing the unsharp mask again, so trying to get more contrast out of some of these masks or some of these layers. Maybe a little bit of color correction on the texture layer. And just a lot of experimentation at that phase. And so here I'm grabbing another texture, but this time I'm going to go ahead and use my curvature mask as its layer mask. And I didn't like the way it looked. It was too uniform, so I grabbed a texture with a lot more variation, and I decided to push the colors a bit but keep it overall cool. And then I weighted that by the curvature mask, so it immediately gave me that extra level of textural detail. So the curvature mask and the cavities are a really quick way to get a lot more textural detail throughout. And again, I'll try different blend modes maybe, or even try different order in the layer stack. And so now I'm grabbing just another texture and my cavity mask this time. So just like I did with the curvature, I'm just doing probably an alpha blend here and weighting it by my cavity map. Trying out different settings, sharpening, maybe some color correction here with a little bit of a levels. So I'm doing it now for the peaks as well. So I did the valley cavity there, and I'm getting that set. And then I'm bringing in the peak cavity, and I'm getting that set. And I'll keep zooming out and evaluating it as a whole, but zooming in and looking at the detail locally. And now here what I'm doing is I went into the green channel of my normal map, and I went ahead and copied that and pasted that back into the layer stack. Because what I'll do in a second is I'll use that as a mask. I'm trying to grab a sandy texture here, and then what I can do is start off with a green color to preview, but using the green channel normal map and my ambient occlusion pass, I can start quickly creating this mask in order to blend in sandy tops. So when I combine those two masks together, I end up with this. and the green color helps me sort of visualize where those sandy tops are, and then I'll go ahead and just replace it with my sand texture. So you can make the tops of your forms a little bit dusty or dirty or sandy just by using the green channel of your normal map and an ambient occlusion pass if you've got one, or maybe a cavity pass. And just continuing to refine that. And I'm looking at the grout now and just continuing to refine that, see what works and what doesn't, trying different colors and you know, refining the gradient map here. All just the same techniques I've been talking about. So gradient maps, using the height map as a base for that, and then just blending different layers on top using the masks I've already got. So I decided maybe the sand was too sandy and I'm making it a little bit more neutral, like it's sort of like a dusty top that matches the grout, just to kind of unify everything together. And always checking it with my lighting, because I want to know what it looks like lit and unlit, should I choose to bake my lighting in. And so now what I'm doing is I'm going to the gummy and the framer passes, I think, and I'm just using those as soft light just to pull a little bit of like detail out, sort of like a sharpening. But now I'm actually just copying the entire canvas, I think. Maybe not. Now I'm still, oh, there it is. So I copied the entire canvas, and now I'm doing a high pass, and I'm just using that as a sharpen. So if you overlay your high pass filter layer, then you can just use that to sharpen up your details a little bit. And I'll use that in conjunction with the gummy and the framer, and those will be overlaid and usually masked. Now at the top of the stack I'm doing a curves adjustment layer. It's a very basic color correction, a little bit of contrast and then a little bit of a curve per color channel, just to tweak the colors a little bit. And then I'll go back and I'll start looking at all the previous base layers again. So just looking at all of these layers that are offsetting my height map through the gradient map and that are giving me all this variation. And I'll start inverting, switching out masks, just again experimenting. But now I'm seeing the results of my experimentation through this non-destructive layer stack. So now what I'm doing is I'm going back to my lighting and I'm kind of tinting it a little bit to fake a little bit of warm sunlight bounce up into the shadows, and then like a cool hemispherical sort of skylight down on the top forms. And I'm just tinting the lighting a little bit just to give it a little bit of that sort of split tone kind of natural lighting feel. Just a stylistic choice. And that's about it. Really just working with non-destructive layers, just a lot of like texture overlays and colors, and working with the masks that I've got. Yeah, hope you enjoyed.